You're with Clement Manyathela.
702.
All right, let's now get an update on the GNU conversations in as far as the budget is concerned. I told you earlier on that there was a report in the Sunday Times suggesting, a report yesterday suggesting that the VAT hike is poised to be reversed for some reason. But when you actually read the detail of the story, there's not so much evidence that says that it is going to be removed. In fact, the article itself goes exactly as soon as the article starts. It talks about how the ANC and other parties now, but especially the ANC, has to now convince the finance minister. And my thing is, the finance minister has already looked at the other options that some of the political parties has recommended as ways to try and generate additional revenue. And he's come back to say, well, that's not really going to work. There's a 13 billion rand or so that needs to be covered. Is it really possible for the finance minister to come up with other options? And I'm just thinking even about retailers now, about consumers and anyone who buys and sells goods and services. You are probably only going to know about the VAT increase at the last minute. That's it. And I wonder what you do in the meantime. And maybe you can give us a call or send us a WhatsApp voice note about that. If you are even doing business with government, if you are in the industry as a retailer, maybe someone who buys, sells goods and services, are you charging VAT at a 0.5 percentage point hike now if you're invoicing for next month, for instance, or for work that's been done, like an invoice that's going to be paid next month once the VAT is implemented? What do you do? Because a lot of the businesses now are saying they're in limbo. Maybe you can let us know what your approach has been. But I want us now to just get an update of what the talks have produced, where we with the talks, especially with some of the key parties in the government of national unity. We're going to start this conversation with Willie Aucamp, who's the DA national spokesperson, joining us on the line. Willie, thank you so much for making time. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement.
So let's start with the conversation that you had with the ANC this past weekend. I think Helen Zille came out of that meeting and said it was quite a progressive meeting. You guys are beginning to find each other. Is that the case? Are you and the ANC finding each other on the broader issues of this GNU and your cooperation, but more importantly on the issue of budget?
Clement, yes, I think tongue-in-cheek, these are fights and battles that we are willing to fight. The one fight that I don't want to fight is the one between Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs, as you just mentioned earlier on.
Yeah.
Clement, yeah, no, we are. We had a the engagement took place on Saturday in a constructive atmosphere with both sides speaking respectfully, yet frankly, about the need to resolve the impasse over the budget and to enhance cooperation between the two biggest parties in the context of the GNU. The DA reiterated our position that a VAT increase is unaffordable in the absence of meaningful reform that will increase economic growth and create jobs, and obviously cut spending all across the spheres of government. So, but the discussions that took place was really constructive, and I think it was good that we at least also agreed that we need to have discussions between ourselves as partners within the GNU, and especially between the two largest partners, to happen more often. It's like being in a marriage. You can't be married and not have discussions with your husband or your wife or your spouse. You must have frequent discussions, and I think that will bring us a lot further with regards to future problems.
Yeah. Is it possible, though, really, for the VAT increase to be cancelled before the 1st of May? Because that's really what's confusing here. I mean, and I wonder if in your negotiations and discussions, there was an appreciation of just the timelines and how, these timelines are not so realistic. I mean, the act is very clear. It does allow for a retraction. But will the finance minister do that? Will even Parliament be able to pass through that other bill that is necessary for us to see the reversal of that VAT? Or are we now perhaps considering a situation where, yes, VAT kicks in on the 1st of May, and then by October, the finance minister then makes a commitment that by October, these are the changes we're willing to introduce to reverse that VAT?
Yeah, Clement, if you look at the timelines, especially the sittings in Parliament and committees, and should changes be made, the time that is afforded to the minister, there simply is just no way that that can happen. The only way in which this VAT hike can be stopped is if the Democratic Alliance is on the 22nd of April successful with our application in the Western Cape High Court, and an interdict is granted to prevent it from being implemented on the 1st of May. Then the process needs to be done in a fashion that will obviously adhere to the requirements of the Standing Committee on Finance and Select Committee on Finance in both houses of Parliament that must go through issues again. But the timelines just does not allow for enough time and consultation to go through this process. So I think that is also one of the reasons why it was very important that we got together with each other over this weekend. That if a VAT increase is unavoidable, if it's going to happen, it's going to be very difficult, even if the minister then announces something in October. All the people that paid VAT from 1 May till October will never be able to get that back. There's just no practical way in which you will be able to pay that back. But let's then see how we can implement measures that will enhance economical growth, that will lead to job creation, and implement these cost-cutting measures so that we can counter for any VAT that might become higher percentages that the people have to pay on the 1st of May. And that is what the Democratic Alliance has said from the beginning, is let's work to a pro-growth budget, because we don't want to sit here, Clement, in a year's time from now and have these same battles, whereas we can implement a lot of measures now that will enable us to can look back in a year's time from now and say, you know what, we made the right decisions, we are battling, but we are winning the fight against joblessness, and we are winning the fight to get better economical growth. We are standing at 0.6%. We cannot remain there. It's just not viable. And measure that then as well against the tariffs and problems that we've got now with all the announcements in the United States of America. We really need to work hard to get this economy turned around.
What are you comfortable with, though, as the Democratic Alliance? I mean, would you rather expenditure be cut by 13 billion rand, which is the amount that the VAT hike would raise for government? I mean, the ANC has been saying it doesn't want to see the return of austerity, but cutting budget with such a huge amount of money, I mean, it doesn't scream more austerity than that. And I know you've come up with your own options to the finance minister, but I want to know are you comfortable as the Democratic Alliance with the ANC that says the bus has already left. We cannot stop VAT on the 1st of May, but as the DA, we promise you that come October, that's a change that we can make, and we can reverse this VAT and consider the options that you put on the table. Is that something you would agree to?
Again, if the court application is successful, then that will be stopped by the courts. But let's assume it is not, and we've got to carry on. The proposals that we've put on the table, you're talking about austerity. It's not necessarily austerity if you cut projects that just did not give you results. We are looking at all these CETAs that gets 24 billion rands a year, and a lot of them aren't yielding any results at all. The Democratic Alliance has put cost-cutting measures that will not amount to austerity, but just went to projects that did not yield results, that are unnecessary, that are duplications or overlapping with others, to the amount of between 30 and 35 billion rand already. So the cost-cutting, without people being dampened or damaged by that, is already more than what the VAT increase will bring in. So we've got to be very careful to talk about austerity when you're talking about cutting stuff that's not necessary.
Okay. And I know you guys always use the CETA as an example, Willie, and maybe you can help us understand here. My understanding is that the funding that CETAs actually get is not necessarily from government. They're funded by the skills development levies imposed on the different companies in the different sectors that the CETAs operate. So when you are saying the DA that there's an opportunity there to cut off the CETAs and somehow that's going to save you money, but how? When there's a lot of more funding that comes from the companies themselves?
Well, in the national budget, apart from what they get from industry, in the national budget, there is an amount of 24 billion rand that goes towards the SETAs, and that is excluding the funding that they get. So it's co-funded. And we need to make sure that whether it's the SETAs or any other project, that what we are paying must yield results. We have, unfortunately, Clement, over many years, seen that there were too many places that were bottomless pits where money were thrown in and absolutely no results were provided for that. We've got to work very carefully with the money of the people of South Africa. We do not have a tree where the bills of money grows on those trees. In actual fact, I think those trees are very close to dying. So we've got to find ways in which we can really work towards cutting costs. We from the DA side said that we must, for example, cut the cost of the advertising budget of government in half. Cut the cost of entertainment and stuff like that for the executive and for all government departments all over by a third. Those are things that we can cut. That will not have an effect on service delivery to the people. We also said very clear that there must not be cuts to any service delivery issues. In actual fact, we should put more money into those. But you've just got to make sure that you direct your money to the right places. Make sure that your money benefits the people instead of certain individuals and not getting results for that.
All right, Willie Aucamp, a member of the DA Federal Executive, thank you so much for speaking to us. It's 21 minutes now after 10 o'clock. I'll bring in Mmusi Maimane after the break. He is also, his party has had discussions with the ANC. He's provided those options to them. I'll bring in the Freedom Fund Plus as well. But let me know what your thoughts are. Willie Aucamp seems to admit that the timelines are just not realistic. It's really too late to stop that VAT increase. But who knows? As I said earlier, the Act does allow for a retraction by the Finance Minister. Will he go with that? What are the consequences of that? And then there's that court action as well that really references that may stop the implementation of VAT on the 1st of May. Well, how do you think our government should manage this going forward? Let me know your thoughts. Give us a call or send us a WhatsApp voice note. Mmusi Maimane comes up after this. It's 20.
Voice.
Your questions.
Your morning radio with Clement Manyathela.
This is 702.
It's 24 minutes now after 10 o'clock. Let's bring in Mmusi Maimane, who is the leader of Bosa. They are also a party that has been having conversations with the ANC. Mmusi joining us on the line. Good morning, Mmusi.
Good morning, and good morning to fellow South Africans.
What progress are you able to share with us following your conversation with the ANC? Is there an acknowledgement of the time that is running out before the 1st of May? And from your discussions, are you confident that they'll be able to pull this off?
Well, firstly, Clement, I think it's important to note that this is a new terrain. South Africa has never been through this process before in utilizing both the Money Bills Act and the various pieces of legislation that we've got. There is a genuine commitment in my view, and I often like to operate in negotiations from the basis of imbue trust until it is betrayed, from the perspective that says that, firstly, let us find the most legally sound way to be able to reverse the VAT. I think the principle of reversing the VAT is accepted. The question is, we've got a few options. The first is you utilize the legislation that allows the minister to table to be able to withdraw. You either then secondly table an adjusted or amended fiscal framework. The third is ultimately to say to yourself, there is a postponement. If the minister is able to set the date as to when VAT can be enacted on citizens, when can there be a postponement? And if that gives the purview to the minister, we can do that. So I think there's a consideration. The second issue is, I think we mustn't lose track of the fact that this is an economic question. We're debating 13 billion rands in a 2.1 trillion rand economy, or in a 2.1 trillion rand budget in about a 5 trillion rand economy. So we need to keep in mind what exactly are we trying to do. And I think the question is how do we grow this economy economy? And that's a fundamental question on the table. Part of it is about achieving expenditure efficiency. And as you know, the Appropriations Committee, or the committee I chair, will be meeting next week to be able to deal with some of the expenditure questions that need to be presented back to the minister before they can be voted on in Parliament. That is happening before the 1st of May, which means we can indicate that there can be cuts that give us the wiggle room to get away with VAT. But that's not the only thing we should be concerned about. There's 1 trillion rands being put onto this economy over the medium term, and therefore we must ask the question whether the economic growth enhancers that we can find in that space, how do we stimulate SMMEs, and how do we ensure that ultimately over the long period of time, a growth of 0.6%, which is insufficient, needs to become one that we get at 3%. So I think, to me, there is a genuine sense that says let's find the legally possible way and let's proceed to try and grow the economy as we go forward.
So from your negotiations with the ANC, when are they going to come back to you as the parties that it's consulted on whether or not this is possible? Again, I'm asking this because I'm just looking at the possible time frames and how realistic they are. So one, when are they coming back to you? But two, as Bosa, are you willing to deal with a scenario should it be presented to you that maybe the finance minister explains that, well, the ship has sailed, we can't stop VAT come the 1st of May, but here's what we can do even now, make a commitment that in October there will be a reversal of sorts. Is that something as Bosa you would be prepared to accept?
So let me put 2 things on the table. Everything has to be guided by law. It's not just a political process. There's a law process here. So I met with Treasury last week. We've had a conversation about what some of the cuts can be. So we've taken that next step. The next step that we take from henceforth is about dealing with the Division of Revenue Bill, which is the main budget frame, which, as you know, as I've explained to you, that the committee meets next week. Once we can get a sense of consensus on, if you then say, look, we are going to defer VAT, or this is how we are going to manage it, the immediate thing that you can equally agree to is where the expenditure cuts, not because you're trying to achieve austerity, but you're trying to achieve efficiency and prioritization on economic growth rather than suiting politicians. If we can get equally an agreement on that, we may be willing to have a different conversation on the VAT issue for the time issues that you've raised. But I think the spirit of the commitment says we've got to find a solution before the 1st. The ANC is committed to reverting back to us before the end of this week. But I can assure you that committee report that we are going to table next week, and I sit on that, will be able to demonstrate to South Africans where the expenditure cuts can come from, because that's part of the public hearing and part of the submissions that we've put forward, so that we actually have a law here that works for all the people of South Africa rather than the politicians.
All right. Mmusi Maimane, the leader of Bosa, thank you so much for making time for us. I really apologize for the quality of that line. I was hoping it's going to improve as we go along, but I think we got the gist of what Mmusi Maimane had to say. Some messages that came through about this issue from C. Balkul, who says, Clement, I hear the gentleman wants us to cut the seaters. I'm a product of a seater. I happen to be granted the opportunity. Why do they want to shortchange the opportunities to the youth? Another one says, Clement, the VAT increase is not welcomed by many South Africans. The non-increase of tax brackets is hurting us, e.g. my salary is still the same as what I got last year. The 5.5 salary increase did not help. Things are really bad. That's a message from Itumeleng in Randbeck. It's 10:31.